Welcome to Cooking from the Cave. I'm Chef Pete Trusiak, and today we're going to be talking the difference between flank and skirt steak. When I teach my cooking classes, I always get the question, hey, can I use this recipe with flank or can I use this recipe with skirt, depending on which one I'm showing? They always ask about the other one. The answer is always yes, you can. However, there's going to be some difference in preparation that you need to do. Flank steak, which is a little bit tougher, a leaner cut of meat, the grain's going to be longer, needs to be marinated for a minimum of 4 hours, and you can do it up to 12 hours. The skirt steak really needs a very short marinated time because it has shorter cuts in it, or shorter grain going through it, more fat, and that needs about 30 minutes at most so that it absorbs all the flavor. It's already very tender. And also the difference between these two cuts is, one, where they're located on the animal. One's closer inside, the other one is on the outside. More fat on the skirt, less fat on the flank, but you always want to cut them the same. You always want to go across the grain. I hear often that people are saying, oh, this skirt steak or this is way too tough, I don't like it, or the flank steak. It's because they're not cutting it right, and I will show you today how to do that. We're going to, because of our inclement weather here in Chicago, we're going to be cooking on an indoor grill pan. This recipe would be excellent outside, so keep that in mind. You can also just take what I show you here, bring it out to the barbecue, and it would be wonderful. Let's do a marinade. We're going to do an Asian marinade on these, and the first thing we're going to do with this Asian marinade, and I have one of those instant marinators you can pick up at almost any culinary store. It's great. It cuts your marinating time down by half. The first thing we're going to add for our marinade is our reconstituted miso. And I'm going to show you what miso is. It's basically fermented soybean and rice, typically brown rice. I reconstitute it in 1 cup of chicken stock. So that means I bring it up to a boil, I whisk in the miso, and there you go. It's now in liquid form. Because this is going to be a marinade, we don't want to use a lot of dried ingredients, and we don't want to be left with, and what those dried ingredients will leave you with is a chalky flavor, and we don't want that. Let me show you what miso is before I go any further. Miso will come, this is the outside packaging, which is important because you can read what it is, but the inside almost looks like a jelly or a Play-Doh type consistency. It's soft, but you do want to reconstitute it in some type of liquid. I'm choosing chicken stock again because I want to get as much flavor into this these 2 cuts of meat as possible. Our next ingredient is going to be a 1/4 cup of honey. I'm going to just eyeball this. As a marinade, and I'm going to echo this theme probably a couple times over, but as a marinade you do want to use, again, as many wet ingredients as possible. So I could substitute brown sugar for that, but you're just going to have to whisk a little bit more. We're going to add roughly about 1 ounce of sesame oil, 2 ounces of soy sauce. This is where our dried ingredients are going to come into play. In here I have cloves. I have roughly about 1/2 teaspoon of cloves, and then 1 full teaspoon of cinnamon. Once I add that in, let's go ahead and whisk it a little bit. And you're just going to want to whisk this until the point of it being well combined. Next ingredient is going to be 1 tablespoon of wasabi, 3 cloves of garlic, 2 sliced scallions or green onions, and I just try and use the light green to dark green portion of it. And the kicker is we're going to use fresh ginger as well as fresh jalapenos in there. And I want to show you this little technique on how to cut peppers as well as how to peel ginger. It's a little bit of a trick, but everybody should know how to do this. We'll start with the ginger. Get yourself a regular spoon, kitchen spoon, and we're going to just, with the side of the spoon, I'm peeling down the side of it. Why this is so important is because ginger is never a perfect shape, and you'll always have these little nubs that are in there, and the edge of the spoon can dig in there and get all that skin, leaving you with more ginger to actually have. And so we're going to peel this back all the way, and then we're going to thinly slice this up. And because this is going to be about a 4-hour marinade, I do want to cut these as small as possible. I could cut this on a or grate this on a grater, a microplane. And then I'm just going to really rough chop it. What this will do is it'll loosen up the essential oils inside of the ginger and release that into our marinade. And it won't be so strong because we're using a fresh ginger versus the powdered, but it'll give it that nice ginger flavor in there, almost offsetting all the heat and everything that's going to go in here. Cutting a pepper would be the same for any type of pepper. I'm going to actually cut down one side about 3/4 of the way down so you can start to peel or open up that pepper. And I'm going to go on one side of the stem, and then with my non-cutting hand I'm just going to roll that pepper out. And if you watch how my knife is going, it's going back and forth in a sawing motion. And then all the seeds are in there. Flip the pepper over and we'll dice this up. Remember, all the heat's with the seeds and the white pith that's in the middle. I do want a little bit of heat, but not a lot to scare people. So if I get a few seeds in here, it's no big deal. I'm going to then cut across these so I can dice them up. Always watching my non-cutting hand. That goes in. We are almost ready for our marinade. I'm going to add about 1 tablespoon of rice wine vinegar. You can use cider vinegar. I wouldn't use just white distilled vinegar. You could even use red vinegar if you wanted to. Red wine vinegar would work well with this. And then our last thing is the limes. These are quartered limes. I'm going to juice them up to give this a little bit of an acid. That's 1 whole lime in there. You don't want the skins. And now we can add our flank steak. We're not going to do anything to the flank steak. We're not going to salt and pepper it. There's enough flavor in here right now. We're going to submerge this into our instant marinator. If you don't have an instant marinator, you can use a non-reactive bowl. Stainless steel bowl would be fine. Don't use an aluminum bowl. A glass dish would work fine too. And as this absorbs the liquid, the meat will change color. Put our lid on, or you can wrap it up with your plastic wrap. The instant marinators are really cool because this just will pull the air out of the instant marinator. So all the moisture, or all the air is coming out. The food's looking for moisture. It's going to grab it from your liquid in here. About 8 pumps. And then all I do is I give it a shake. Lid's on there nice and tight. And now we can put this in the refrigerator for about 3.5 hours. We'll throw our skirt steak in for the last 30 minutes, and then I'll show you how to grill this. After 3.5 hours, our flank steak, we're going to take a look at it. It's been in the refrigerator in the marinade. As you can see, it's changed color a little bit from absorbing all of that soy and miso marinade. A little bit more water too, because that's just the salt that's in the soy sauce will actually be pulling some moisture out of the beef itself and then replacing that liquid with the marinade. So there is a little bit more liquid in here from the juice from the beef itself. Now we're going to go ahead and add our skirt steak. Again, our skirt steak, just get it in there. I'm going to kind of push everything aside. Make sure it gets well coated as well. And we're going to let this sit for about 30 minutes in the refrigerator. While that's sitting, I have my grill pan started on slow heat just to warm it up. I'm doing that because just to get the flavors on the grill to kind of cook off. This is all set. Gonna give it a shake. Grill pan's heating up on very low heat. We'll put this in the fridge and then we'll come back in 30 minutes and we'll start cooking dinner. After 4 hours of marinating our flank steak, and after 30 minutes in the marinade, our skirt steak are now ready to come out. And before we actually put them on the grill, we want to let them rest at room temperature for about 15 minutes after removing them from the marinade. What this does is it'll allow the meat to not seize up as soon as it gets hit with the hot flames or your hot grill. So you can see these smell great, they look great. The marinade can be used as a sauce too. The only thing that I would say is before actually marinating the meats, reserve a little bit of this marinade, keep it off to the side, and then that little bit that you have reserved off to the side you can just kind of drizzle over your steaks when they're all said and done before you serve it. We're going to serve ours with some steamed vegetables, and while my skirt steak was marinating, I chopped up some broccoli, I got some baby carrots, some scallions, some garlic, and some sesame oil. And we're going to steam the carrots and the broccoli, get those going in our steamer back here. That'll take about 10 to 12 minutes. And I'm going to heat up a little pan over here with sesame oil, and I'm going to drop the garlic in there so we can, once the vegetables come out, we can toss them in that hot sesame oil with garlic and serve it with our sliced up steaks. So while we're letting these sit at room temperature, let me get my steamed vegetables going for you. Steaming vegetables is very simple. You want to just start with a little bit of water in the bottom of the pan, not so little that it's going to evaporate from the heat, and not so high that it's going to boil off. You want to get some steam coming out. That's what we got going there. Drop the pot on top. Now our vegetables are in the pan. I just want to say, make sure you put about a teaspoon of salt in with the water so that it does keep the vegetables green and orange, and it just keeps them nice and bright in color. Over here, our pan that we're going to be lightly sauteing the garlic. We're infusing the sesame oil with the garlic. I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of sesame oil, 2 cloves of garlic, and I'm just going to ever so lightly just let this garlic infuse the sesame oil over here. I'm not going to really let it come up to a boil. I will stir it every now and then. And that should be good. We'll just kind of keep an eye on it while we're going to cook the steaks. Now the steaks. Difference between flank and skirt: one, the size and also the thickness. You can see that here on the pan. If I have an outdoor grill, or if I have a large enough grill pan, I'm going to obviously do the flank steak first and then follow up by the skirt steak. I'm going to do this in 2 phases. The flank steak will take the longest. It's going to take about 7 minutes per side to get it to a nice medium rare. The skirt steak, if your pan is hot, should literally be 2 to 3 minutes per side. Pull it out, let both of them rest, and they'll come to a nice medium rare. I'm going to do this in 2 stages because I don't have that big of a grill pan, but I do want to show you how to do this. And while we're waiting for one steak to take, we'll tent it. We'll keep it, that steak warm on the cutting board so it doesn't cool down in the time that the skirt steak has to cook. Grill's going to create a lot of smoke, so I'm going to turn my hood on. I'm going to come back in about 6 minutes. We'll take a look at how that flank steak's doing, and we'll flip it over. It's been 7 minutes. Now on the one side, we're going to flip it over. It's got the great char marks. It's starting to smell great, like all those flavors in there. We'll come back, check it in about 6-7 minutes, and then we can let it start to rest on our cutting board. After about 7 minutes on the second side, we're going to flip our cutting board over. Get the steak off. It's looking really great. Nice grill marks on there. Our next step, just grab some aluminum foil, loosely cover it. We're going to let it rest while we finish up our skirt steak. Again, the skirt steak will take 3 minutes per side. It's going to go really fast. And I won't even put the top of the grill pan on there. I'll just let it set off the side so it's going to cook that fast. I don't even have to worry about it. While that's cooking, I'm going to check on my veggies. They're, show them to you. But they're nice, bright green. al dente, bright orange carrots and everything. We can shut our steamer off. We'll just keep them warm over there until we're just ready to plate up. Then we'll toss them with the sesame garlic oil and we'll get ready to plate this wonderful meal up. About 3 minutes per side. You're going to get some nice grill marks on that skirt steak. We'll flip it over, give it another 3, then I'll show you how to properly slice it so you can keep those great tasting steaks really tender. 3 minutes aside, that's done. And now we can talk about how to properly slice these two wonderful steaks. When it comes to the all types of meat, it's going to have grains in it, and it's very important with beef and pork and some of your game animals to make sure you're always slicing across the grain. It's hard to do that with chicken, but with beef and pork and those game animals, make sure you're cutting across the grain. I marked my steak across the grain so I know that as long as my knife is going in line with this, my flank steak, I will always be cutting across the grain. But to show you what we're talking about, we're going to kind of zoom in here and really point out where that grain is. Looking at the meat, you're going to look for these little natural wrinkles or lines that are in the meat. That is your grain. So the grain is running this way, and it will run the same direction across each individual piece of muscle. So what you want to do is cut across it. I'm going to cut it on a bias, so it'll be at an angle, but still across. And that looks just awesome. And go very thin slices with it on a bias. And we'll continue to do this until we're all the way done. Now, the skirt steak we're going to cut twice, and the reason for that is it's natural for us to just take our knives and cut this way with it because it seems like, oh, it's shorter. But our grain and those is running right. There's a perfect one there. There's another one. So our grain is running this way. If we were to cut our steak this way, we'd be going with the grain, leaving us a very tough piece of meat. So we'll cut it once. Then we're going to rotate our skirt steak, and you can even double up on it if you want to. But for this, we're just going to now cut. We're going to cut across the grain. Again, you're going to cut this skirt steak with the grain once, make it into smaller pieces, or maybe even twice if it's a really long skirt steak. Cut it once or twice, and then cut it across the grain so it's into smaller, easier pieces to handle. I'm going to finish this up, do both sides, then we'll start plating up our vegetables and we're ready to have dinner. Our beef is plated. We're going to take our vegetables out of the steamer, coat them with our sesame oil and our garlic, give it a good toss, and then we're going to plate this up. The dogs want in, so that means it's dinner time. We're going to plate the, throw some green onions on top. And there you go. Flank steak, skirt steak. The difference is how to cut it, how to cook it. Thank you for joining us from Cooking from the Cave. I'm Chef Pete Truzek, and we'll see you real soon.